All right, good morning. So I've been thinking about this painting some more, and I've decided I really don't like the placement of the bird. I want it more of a diagonal energy, which creates more movement. So again, as I'm thinking about changes to make, I'm always thinking about composition and how to make things better or flow better. And so I thought I was going to have to paint over large portions of the bird, but what I'm going to do is just change its beak. So I actually have all my colors today on my palette. I've mixed some slow drying acrylic medium with my paints so that they don't dry so fast. I know a lot of painters like oil over acrylic because acrylic dries much faster, but when you're painting in a little studio in your home, carpet, I don't know. With my daughter, I share this with my daughter, so I can't really whip out the oils and all the fumes that go along with that. So this is my solution. So these are acrylics with some slow drying media. So I'm gonna go ahead and color mix and paint over this whole beak. Got some of this off-white color, got a little white in there. And that's really light. I'm gonna add a little raw sienna. Going to kind of work that color into the background in some other places so it seems like it's unified and matches. I also might use it to redefine and crisp up the edge around his head here. And I think that's enough for me to block in a new line and not go crazy seeing two lines at once. I'm going to go back to my image here. And now that I've got more colors on my palette, I can actually use a base color that kind of matches the color his beak is going to be. So do a little orange, red. So down a little bit. Can't see what I'm doing. Okay. When I mix paints, I like to have one color and another color, and I pull in a little bit of another color and then kind of, pull it in gradually so that I can watch the color change instead of taking, say, a big blob of yellow, a big amount of yellow into a big amount of blue, and then trying to make the perfect green just a little bit at a time of the darker color into the lighter colors. Kind of the magic with that. So in the photo, the beak is going straight. I'm going to play around with the angle. I think once again, when I'm painting this close, I'm going to rest my hand on the canvas and actually add a little water into the pigment. So you can get a crisp edge. I'm going to curve it around the other way. As this dries, I'm going to come back and make it a little thinner, crisp it up a little bit. I'm kind of playing with the placement. I think this originally, like more yellow line was a little bit too low. I'm going to actually bring this into the head. said, I'm going to play around with the details, right? Add some layers. This looks really funky right now, but I'm just going to block in the new dynamic with the diagonal. The flower will be up here, and we've got some more movement versus just the grid and some of these grid shapes from the paper. Just made it too blocky for me. Now I'm going to block in the rest of the composition, and where are the basic shapes, what's this painting going to be, and I like the idea of using multiples and multiple images of the same thing, repetition, create movement. So I'm just going to show you here what I saw this morning as I was just contemplating and looking at the piece. Over here, I'm kind of seeing a wing here, a little head, a little chest and the body of another bird, his beak going this way. And also right here, I'm seeing a frontal view of Hummingbird. This, different colored chest. Of course, the wings aren't in there yet, but head, body, tail feathers. So got some asymmetry and some movement and repetition of these hummingbirds interacting with each other, and yeah, I think that's where I'm going to go with it. So next, instead of getting caught up in what I don't like about this, because it's just a blocked in layer, I'm going to go ahead and start blocking in what I'm seeing here with some visual research. So I already found my images I'd like to use. And this looks like a female here, less color, this intense color, and I like the idea of having some variety. So can't really see that very well, but I think I'm going to go ahead and block her in with a lighter color than this original larger bird in the foreground. Maybe I'll just use white. White with a hint of some yellow and green here and there. Just getting my white. I've got a small brush with this kind of detailed block in. Let's see if I can get this a little closer. So let's see, we'll start with this line here. I'm kind of, right now, I'm looking at the image, but I think I'm going to change it up a little bit as well. Maybe not make it at quite of an angle. A little bit of an angle. Yeah, body. I really like this balance of observing and inventing. Through lots of study of reality and objects and phenomena that we get better at being able to invent it convincingly. I kind of debated on doing these videos as like a speed paint and just videotape a bunch and mash it together kind of fast so nobody gets bored, but I don't get to talk through my process either. So I kind of like this downward angle of the beak here. Plug it in. again, see what I think. You know, this texture here looks like a wing to me, and it's really thick, but I kind of like the angled upward wing here, so I'm just going to block in the little difference there and see what happens. My last series of hummingbirds that I created was actually wet on wet watercolor with Prismacolor pencil on top, and I really love that. Actually gifted it as a trade for some healing work, and it's always nice. It feels good to do. But this is a different process, you know, the layering of the paint. And again, I'm just looking at the shape, comparing one shape to another shape. Right now the body is feeling a little narrow, a little more belly in here. And I'm going to come back to those wings. We're not quite there yet, but I love the reaching energy in this particular image. The neck kind of curling in versus my original image I saw here with that more upright. And then the sky over here is going to be a little bigger. Let's see. I don't really like the straight crispness of these wings in this image, but it's a good angle because I really like the idea of the frontal view of the bird looking at us. So I'm going to go ahead and block that in, and we'll stop this video for now. Just going to go with what I see first in the image, and then I'll block in some shapes from that photo. Do something to show motion with these wings. You know, all my photos I take of the hummingbird, they're always blurry, right? Because their wings are moving so quickly. This is again just a loose sketch. This sky. I'm gonna come in with another layer and add some color and develop these guys. Maybe just paint some motion lines in. Get all crazy here. I'm not sure how much of this I'm gonna paint over or keep. I think next step will be to paint in some of the flower shapes and maybe block in the kind of color tones these guys are going to be. I never like to finish one part of a painting first, and this is something I'll tell my students as well, that whatever color you're using or whatever part you're working on, you want to bring that, you know, background to other places. So for example, while I've got this white on my palette and on my brush, I'm going to go back to my image I was referencing here. Oh. Wow. Right, and I can block in some of those lighter shapes. I can find some of the edges of these feathers, that contrast of the white. Add a little water in my paint for a crisper edge, and there's even a little white along his eyes. eyes are so expressive no matter what creature you are painting. Right now, my eye looks like a oblong blob. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm going to make sure I get a good amount of, not too much paint on my brush, but just so I can control the this light edge that wraps around the eye, and then it comes in, and then it kind of comes down. It, changes the expression a little bit. And I'm not going to get too caught up in details. I'm going to blop in some white for feather texture in here, and I'm going to look at the wings. Oh, well, there we go. That's what I get for using my camera roll instead of Google image. Okay. And again, I've got, like, I could really spend a whole hour doing this one wing. I don't want to do that. I'm gonna just block in some of these shapes and use my brush as a tool to start thin and push it to thicker, so the light lines are like, they're actually kind of gray, really. It's from thin to thick. Here's this edge here. I'm gonna block it in so I have a reference of where the feather's lighter and where this darker gray part is, and then that green part. So everything I'm doing, I'm breaking down into shapes like that. And okay, that's the green part, here's the gray part, and now I know where my lines are gonna start and finish. Those last two strokes, I didn't even really look at my image. I'm just glancing down and kind of seeing the nature of those lines, the curvature of it, and then improvising a little. Right, and then I'll come back in and add some details, shift things that maybe are off a little bit. You can see I'm getting a dry brush effect, so a little more water, a little more paint. It's actually more dark on this lower wing as it gets further out, and more light closer in. And here we go. So we'll see what I can do in the next 15 minutes when I get a chance. Happy painting!